the thing about antidepressants that was so funny or paradoxical is this drug is supposed to make you feel better. But the reason it made me feel better was I feel like it gave, in my mind, it gave me a more lethal potential option for suicide. So yeah, I would go to therapy, but I would not be 100% honest about how serious my plans were. I think because I really wanted to keep those plans. And I was like, if I tell somebody, they're going to try to stop me. And like, he's literally grabbing my hand and I'm trying to run away and just like screaming, no. And this is like in a doctor's office. Like there's like other people around. There's like...
Wow. It's so comedic at the same time.
And I eventually just like broke away and just like ran out the door. So just paranoid mental patient, just took off, no shoes, just like screaming, just took off down the street. The next thing I know, I'm getting handcuffed behind my back and my head's getting pressed onto the conveyor belt, like the grocery store, like where the groceries go down. Head being pressed onto the conveyor belt and getting handcuffed behind my back and brought out to the police car.
This is a remarkable story of a woman who, in her quest to heal from depression and suicidal thoughts, unfortunately found herself in the wrong psychedelic setting. Imagine trying everything for years to climb out of a deep emotional pit, only to feel like you've run out of options and you are ready to end it all. And then in a last-ditch effort, you turn to a promising psychedelic experience, only to be hit with an even heavier blow. But as soon you'll discover, being in the wrong place ended up being exactly in the right place. She survived, and today she's here to share her story. We will also explore how to heal from suicidality and other uplifting, inspiring topics. Ladies and gentlemen, Lindsay Seagull. Maybe let's start with asking you what brought you to plant medicine.
So I did not come to plant medicine like very intentionally in the beginning. I think I started very much from like the Western medicine mindset of like, give me drugs.
Okay.
Like the drugs that you get like at the pharmacy. Well, like I originally was trying to start healing my brain because I suffered depression, really serious depression from a really young age. And it wasn't until I was in my 20s, like late teens, early 20s, that I really felt like I really need to do something about this, where I'd been kind of depressed my whole life, but that was the first time where I really like couldn't function and was starting to get like more seriously suicidal. And I'd had suicidal thoughts like from when I was like 9 or 10 years old.
That's young. Why do you think you were depressed since you were so young and having suicidal thoughts so early?
I think I was naturally a very sensitive person, sensitive and on like the anxious side. And I came from honestly like a pretty like mean, abusive family. I was really like bullied by my family. It's funny, when I went to school, I actually had an easier time socially because I was like, nothing's going to be worse than what I deal with at home.
First, when you said bullied, I was like, oh, at school. And then you said by my family, and I prefer to be at school.
Yeah.
That was a very unusual. Yeah, that was very unusual. You usually don't hear that.
Yeah, I was very weird, you know, like I'm weird looking, like, you know, I had like big ears and, you know, like the really bad like Jewish nose, and like it was like a lot of like making fun of me for my appearance, but
by your own family.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Actually, like, and my parents were kind of the worst, and I think my brothers just kind of followed the lead. You know, it's like
younger or older.
I have 2 older brothers. My dad in particular, my mom would kind of go along with it. Like his sense of humor is very like sadistic, whereas like when I was upset, that I would do this thing where I would scrunch up my toes, and they would like make fun of me for that and like call me toes. And so like the more upset I got, the funnier it was to them. So I think I kind of learned to just sort of stay in my room. Like I felt okay at school, but yeah, like just being like a really sensitive kid in a really like harsh environment. I really follow the work of Marsha Linehan. She talks a lot about borderline personality disorder, which I was diagnosed with. And she says that a lot of times it comes from growing up in an invalidating environment.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I probably was naturally, like, maybe genetically predisposed to maybe being on the more neurotic side. But I think my environment definitely made it so much worse, where I really didn't feel like I belonged here. Like one
Here in the world?
Yeah. Like one of my core beliefs is like, you were never supposed to be here. Like, it's like an accident that you're here.
Is that belief still alive?
I think it's gotten better.
Okay.
It's gotten better, but it's still there. I'm still working on that one a little bit.
Do you know if you can trace the beginning of that belief?
I think when I was pretty young, my mom told me that I was a mistake, like I was an oops.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good reason to believe that then.
Yeah, and that like they didn't really want a third kid, but they had two boys, and they're like, oh, well, might as well try for a girl, because my mom really wanted a girl. But then I wasn't like the right kind of girl. Like I wasn't cute enough. I was like ugly. People thought I was a boy because I had no hair. So she got my ears pierced when I was like 6 months old, and people still thought I was a boy. So I think it was like just really internalize those messages of like, there's something not right about you. Like you're really like, you're different and not in a good way.
Well, partially, I don't know if you still believe that, but the way you were talking about it was in the present tense. It's like, you are ugly, like it's a matter of fact, where beauty is so subjective, right? Of course, there's no point on me saying you're beautiful, because that is, kind of like pushing against a belief if it's still there. It's like telling a skinny girl that sees herself as fat, saying like, no, you're skinny. It doesn't matter. So I'm not gonna go there, but I was curious if that belief is still alive, because you were mentioning it in the present moment, or were you mentioning it because that's what she used to tell you?
I think it's both. Like, I think I've done a lot of healing and done a lot of, internal work, but I think those really, really deep core beliefs are still there. It's not as bad as it used to. Like, it's slowly sort of chipping away at it. But like, I think my internalized sense of like what beauty is, it's like really hard to break that.
Okay.
It's like, I actually got a nose job. Like, this is not my nose I was born with. Like, I had a much more like Jewish looking nose, and I like really, and like no one at school would have noticed that or said that. Like, I didn't encounter any anti-Semitism at all in the real world. It was all just from my family. Like within that family system, anti-Semitism of like against ourselves, really. Like, it's really bad to look Jewish.
That's true. That's powerful.
Like, that was really what saved me, was teachers being nice. And I remember like getting my like kindergarten report card, and my mom reading it and being like, they say you're bubbly, and being like, kind of like it making fun of me, and also being like that doesn't seem like you, like that I was bubbly at school.
I see.
Like, that didn't.
They didn't get to know this part of you because the environment at home was not basically allowing it. Right?
Yeah, it wasn't a safe or good place to be bubbly, but I was able to be bubbly at school. So yeah, school's really what saved me. I think I probably would have had worse problems, like worse psychological problems even earlier, if I didn't have such a good experience at school, which was just like, I didn't do that well, like socially with peers, but I loved teachers enough that was enough to like, because they were nice to me.
It's amazing how different people's experience can be. I had the exact opposite. Home was nice, school was terrible.
Yeah, that's more normal, because usually peers are harsher because it's like your family loves you. They accept you. So like, even if you're a little funny looking, like your family's not going to make fun of you about that. But like some other kid might. Whereas for me, it was the total opposite.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So this gives a lot of context for why you were suicidal at 10 and depressed your whole life. So you said around 20, you started seeking for something.
Yeah, like I was really used to that feeling. Like, depression felt normal to me. But when I was in grad school, I had a really long commute. I was commuting from Poughkeepsie, New York to New York City. I had a work-study job that was like 35 hours a week. I was taking 4 graduate level classes and didn't have any family support. So I was, needing to worry about money. And I think I just kind of like broke down at that point where I was just running so fast, trying to achieve something or trying to have some kind of ambition. And I was like, okay, I've got this plan. Like, I'm going to do my homework on the train. It's going to be okay. I'm going to get this like master's program done in a year and a half. And I just got to a point where I couldn't even do my homework. I would literally just stare at the Hudson River for like the whole like 90 minutes. And I had actually made an appointment at Student Health like 4 times and kept canceling the appointment. Like, I would make it, cancel it, make it, cancel it. Because that's how scared I was to seek help. Or I don't know if it was just fear. I was also like, it's not a big deal. Like, you'll get through it. Like, I just told myself, like, just suck it up. Like, and so I finally made the appointment at Student Health. And I remember the psychiatrist being like, I think you're long overdue for some antidepressants. And I was so relieved, like just this feeling of like, okay, they're going to give me some pills that are going to fix me. And like that feeling of like relief. And then the big thing he did was he gave me for anxiety. And I never actually had an official panic attack yet at that point, but he gave me some benzos for anxiety. And the first time I tried, it was, Klonopin. The first time I tried a benzodiazepine, it was like that feeling that the alcoholics talk about with like their first drink of like, oh my God, I've come home. Like that. I never had that with alcohol, but I had it with benzos of like, yes, like the relief, like the full body, like relief. And of course I immediately started abusing it, like taking it when I didn't really need it, just being like, I just want to check out. I just want to be done. So I think like those like journeys into Western medicine were my first forays into like, oh, well, you can do things to fix your brain. Like if you take this, you can make yourself feel really different. Like I didn't experiment with drugs or alcohol as a teenager at all, like my older brothers did. And I kind of saw them do it. And I was like, that doesn't seem that interesting or exciting to me.
You could have easily gone that route with that history, right? Because it's ultimately numbing.
Yeah.
But, well, I'm glad you didn't.
Yeah. I found sleep instead. I slept a lot. I also have hypothyroidism, which I think actually develops because of chronic childhood stress of like, this is a really unsafe, really stressful environment. Let's just go to sleep. Mm-hmm. Like that's how we're going to keep you safe. Like I think the like internal intelligence of our bodies, like, yes, it's like a bad thing that I was in such a stressful environment, but like my body knew how to adapt of like, we're just gonna dial this whole thing down. You're just gonna go sleep. And so I would sleep like sometimes 12 to 16 hours, especially starting like after puberty. So I think that's what kept me safe was sleeping a lot and just having the TV. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, in my late teens, early 20s, it's like I have to start acting like an adult now. Like now I'm in the real world. Like there's jobs and expectations, and I think I couldn't handle that at all. Like I could handle having to write papers in high school, and that was about the level of stress that I could handle.
So any responsibility that was bigger than that as an adult became maybe too much.
Yeah, and I put a lot on myself, like in my expectations of what I thought being an adult meant. It's like you have to have this kind of job, and you have to make money, and you have to be creative, and like the whole thing just came crashing down where I couldn't do anything. And so I started taking antidepressants, and none of it helped. But then it was very exciting because all of a sudden I had this substance that is like, oh, I could maybe overdose on these. And like the thing about antidepressants that was so funny, so ironic, I guess, or paradoxical is this drug is supposed to make you feel better. But the reason it made me feel better was I feel like it gave me a more lethal potential option for suicide. Mm-hmm. Because like the plan I had when I was 10 years old was like to drown myself in the bathtub. It probably wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have been a very good plan.
Probably not. Your instincts would have kicked in.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I'll stay up all night. So I'm really tired and I'll like take a bunch of cold medicine and I'll just be really sleepy. I'll run a really hot bath and I'll try to just like fall asleep face down.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was literally my plan.
It's so sad to know that you and other children, and probably a lot of people in the audience might even relate, that children have to go through that. Not have to, but that children are going through that or have gone through.
Mm-hmm.
Those are not the thoughts that children should be having in their minds, and to me it's very sad. But at the same time, I know where you're at today, and I'm really excited to share with the audience like the journey that was from there to where you're at today, because a lot of what I do in this channel is to help people realize that there is hope and that their healing is available. And so I think these stories, especially if they, for those who can relate, whether they were struggling with suicide or with something else, right? But that this thing that seemed impossible and unbearable, it can come eventually to either full resolution or a partial resolution, and you're still on your way. So yeah, I'm curious to dive a little bit more into what happened next.
Yeah. So I struggled with that for a while. I did, the first time I intentionally overdosed, just kind of nothing happened. And I was like, well, damn it. I guess I have to like go through the rest of my day. One of the times I had intentionally overdosed, it's actually the first job I got after getting my master's degree, because I somehow managed to finish, even though I was struggling so much. I was just so broken. I was like, I'm going to go work at a bagel shop. So I went to work at this bagel store, and it's like a really, it's a really great place. I mean, there was nothing wrong with the place to work. It was just me. So I took, just took every pill I had the night before and like went to bed, and I just like woke up. I was like, okay, I guess I have to go to work. So I went to work, and I was feeling a little funny. Like I felt this like weird kind of pressure behind my eye and just had like a strange headache, but I was like, oh, whatever. And I was starting to pour somebody coffee. And the next thing I remember is I like woke up on the floor. So apparently I started having seizures. Like I started seizing, and woke up on the floor. I was covered in blood because I had hit my chin really hard on the counter on the way down, and the ambulance was coming. And
the last thing you remember was just serving coffee?
Yeah.
You went from serving coffee to what's going on?
Yeah, I didn't have any memory at all of what happened. They told me afterwards that it was like just like a tree falling over, just like timber, just like down. And when I got to the hospital, I had to tell them what happened, and they were like, well, we really think, you should go inpatient. And I was like, if you just let me go back to work, I'll be fine. I promise. Like I literally talked my way after like literally taking an overdose, intending to end my life. I was able to just kind of talk my way into letting them let me leave. And I just went back to work the next day.
So they let you?
They let me leave. Mm-hmm. And just told the people at work, like, oh, I must have had like a blood sugar, I must have had like a hypoglycemia. Like I've never fainted like that before. So they literally thought I probably just had like a blood sugar issue. And so stuff like that was happening where I was ending up inpatient, and tried lots of different medications, like, prescription medications. None of it really would help long term. Sometimes I'd feel a little better temporarily. But after a few years of that, I realized that was not going to be the answer, that I needed a different answer. And that's when I started researching more about like other kinds of drugs, like plant medicine. Like there's a lot of, I read the internet, and there's a lot of information out there about like different types of healing. And I was in therapy and tried all different kinds of therapy. Yeah.
Were you sharing with your therapist about your suicidality?
Not to the fullest extent. Mm-hmm. I think I was scared to tell the truth about that.
Mm-hmm. Should we talk about that for a minute?
Yeah.
Because we were talking earlier, and I think that was really important, which is this taboo thing that no one wants really to talk about. First, because obviously frowned upon, it scares people, but also there's something about sharing with your therapist that you're suicidal, that can scare them, but it can also scare you because of what they might force you to do. So yeah, I think if you want to go there, we can talk a little bit about suicide. And then also I'd like to ask you if there's anything useful about suicidal thoughts, if there's something about suicidal thoughts that can teach you something or that you can get out of, so that we can give it a different spin.
I think also to start, I was very well practiced at minimizing my own pain. I think like that's something I internalized. I think a lot of children internalize that from their, families or adults of like, you're fine, just brush it off, like suck it up. And I got very good at doing that to myself. So I think there was a layer of denial there of like, okay, maybe if I don't talk about this, it's not that big of a deal. Like I could be at a place when I'm alone and feel like totally at the depths of despair, like, having, really serious thoughts about how I want to end my life, and then be able to go to work and be like, I'm fine. Like, and then afterwards being like, maybe I actually am fine because I shouldn't have been able to just go to work. So almost invalidating myself. But yeah, I mean, I think I was afraid to say the full extent because once I had been inpatient, I never wanted to be inpatient again. Like inpatient is basically a mix of like jail. I don't know, like this sort of like little kid feeling of like, I don't get to decide when I eat. I don't get to decide I need permission to go to the bathroom.
Oh.
They're watching everything I do. So I was like, I don't want to go back inpatient. I think all of the healing that I've done was just because of how bad being inpatient was. That was like, I'll do anything before I try that again.
Not because of how bad life was, but because of how bad being impatient was.
Yeah,
like at least that motivates you to do something.
Yeah, it's like if you keep messing up these suicide attempts, you're just going to keep ending up in the hospital.
You had more than one suicide attempt?
Yeah, so multiple overdoses. And then with my most serious suicide attempt, I ended up in the hospital for a month. First, I was in the ICU, and then they transferred me right from the ICU to, the psychiatric inpatient. I was on a bunch of different drugs, and they wanted to give me some antipsychotics. And I remember being scared to take the antipsychotics because of hearing about some of the side effects could be permanent even after you stop taking them. So it's funny. It's like, I didn't really care about living anymore. I was like, I don't want to take that drug because that could like mess me up.
It's like you don't want to be living, but you also, in a way, you're taking care of yourself.
Right. Yeah. This mix of like hope and hopelessness that's just back and forth between a little bit of hope to go in this direction, but then some level of hopelessness kind of holding me back. So yeah, I would go to therapy, but I would not be 100% honest about how serious my plans were. I think because I really wanted to keep those plans. And I was like, if I tell somebody, they're going to try to stop me. Mm-hmm. So it's like weird that I would go to therapy to like, oh, maybe I'll feel better. But I like didn't really believe, I think deep down, I didn't really believe that I would. Like, I didn't really think they could help me. So I think part of the suicidal plan is like, I'll be the one to take back control. Like when the time comes, like no one's going to make me do anything I don't want to do. Like ultimately I have all the power, kind of like being my own God, really. If like I decide when I live or die, like it's kind of empowering in a way of like, I think so much of my life feeling like a victim. And it's like, well, at least if I'm a victim of myself, like that's kind of empowering. And I think they were, if someone had said like, that's not an option, that is not an option whatsoever, I would have been devastated. Like that was my like lifeline.
Suicide was your lifeline.
Yeah.
Well, it makes a lot of sense because I think of suicide as a potential exit. Like you can try everything else, but if everything is unbearable and torturous, at least you have an option. To not have the option could be more frightening than death itself, I can imagine.
Absolutely. Like I really believe there are a lot of things worse than death. I mean, I don't really understand what happens after we die. I thought I did. I thought it was nothing. Now I don't believe that anymore. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I thought it was going to be an escape, a way out. like it was like a comforting thing. Like as a child, having developed those thoughts, that was me self-soothing. Like I would feel comforted by that of like, okay, I'm dealing with something really difficult. It's hard. It's like, okay, I can always do that. Like I could feel like a physical sense of relaxation when I would picture, making plans.
Wow. This is powerful. This is already powerful.
I didn't know any different. Like I think children are pretty good at self-soothing. They'll find something. And unfortunately, what a lot of us find is addiction. It took me, I didn't find alcohol until much later, until like my 20s. When I started mixing benzos and alcohol, that was my first time like, oh, like I could really actually, I know it sounds so messed up to say, but like I could actually really successfully complete a suicide. Like, cause I was like, messing around with these overdoses, like it's not really going to work. Like you're probably just going to keep like just having bad experiences and waking up in the hospital. Like it's pretty hard. I felt like my fear was actually that I wasn't going to be able to kill myself. Like that I was not going to find a method that was going to work well enough, which will lead us to how I ended up purchasing firearms, but we'll get to that a little later. But like it was honestly, I think when I discovered alcohol and when I had suicidal thoughts, it was the same feeling. It's like a hand on my shoulder being like, it's going to be okay. I'm not going to let you be in pain anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it really worked. Like it felt like, cause I felt so alone. It was like, okay, well, at least I can take care of myself in this way.
Mm-hmm. I think you're probably the right person to give a word to anybody struggling with suicide, especially since you're on the other side of it, as I know that you're not struggling with suicide anymore. So what would you say to anybody watching this right now that has struggled or that is struggling with suicide daily?
I would say that it's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. What you're experiencing is a reasonable reaction to an unreasonable situation. And I wish somebody had told me that, because I always thought that I was the problem. And like looking back, we think of suicide as such an extreme thing. When you actually look at my life and just like the facts, it's like, that makes sense. Like it makes sense for whatever reason. I don't know how much I believe in like chemical imbalance anymore. I used to really believe that there was just something wrong with my brain.
Mm-hmm.
And that was why I needed drugs. It's like, just take this drug, it'll fix the chemical imbalance. But I think a lot of times suicidal thoughts they're a reaction to just unbearable pain.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard it described as when the intensity of the pain overwhelms your ability to manage it. And that just feels like the only way out. So I would say try to find someone you trust to talk to about it. And that might be really difficult because there might not be anybody you trust to talk about it. And you might end up inpatient. And hopefully if you find the right kind of therapist or someone to talk to, you can make a pact with them. I had a pact with my current therapist. He said, I'm not going to put you inpatient, but you have to tell me the truth if you're feeling that way. Because if you're talking to me about it, that means you don't want to do it.
Right.
So he's like, if you tell me, I'm not going to commit you, because that's you telling me that you want help.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say it is a cry for help, and like listen to your own cry for help. And it used to really make me upset when people would be dismissive about, like, oh, they're just doing it for attention. It's like, yeah, they are.
Sure. What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
Meaning like the attention you didn't get, that it is one of our basic human needs, especially as children in formative years. What's a little bit ironic is that if the other person who's saying, oh, they are just in need for attention, is not in need of attention, it's not because they are amazing or better than you.
Mm-hmm.
It's because they probably received that attention in formative years.
Mm.
So it's like, it's like saying somebody who's like begging for food, they are just hungry. Sure. because that need has not been met. It's easy for you who have your stomach full, right? So this is the same thing, but it's just emotional.
Exactly. Yeah, like I would say one of the things that pushed me towards more and more serious, more lethal methods was that fear or shame around people saying they're just doing it for attention. It was me being like, I'll show you, I really meant it. Whereas if
I can see how that can really push you, prove others, or even cry for more attention, because that in a way can make you feel that you're receiving less of the attention that you need.
Yeah, like if I talk about how I want to kill myself, I'm just going to get made fun of. Like they're just going to be like, or dismissed. So I would say you do have to find the right person to talk to, because you could definitely tell someone who will end up making you feel worse, either shaming you, or just saying something really dismissive, like, oh, well, like, look at all the positive things you have going on in your life. You shouldn't feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so much of us don't know what to say when we're presented with something really difficult like that. So it's nice that there's, this is going to sound like a really funny statement, but it's nice that there's the internet now. Because I didn't have the internet when I was in middle school, when mental health wise shit was really hitting the fan. Like if you have no one else to talk to, like at least there are like online forums, and I mean, maybe you'll get someone tell you like, you should do it. Like, I mean, the internet's the wild, wild west.
Yeah. Can go both ways.
Yeah. But you might find some support. I mean, even just like commenting on a YouTube video, and you get a response back. Like that's still like it's still like a little bit of a lifeline. I think what people who struggle with suicidal thoughts really need is someone to tell them that they matter and to make them feel that it is a good thing that they exist and that they should continue to exist. And I think what helped me in like my darkest moments was like, well, I did still have some friends, or like I do still have some people to talk to. And those were kind of my, the things that I would think about when I was trying to find reasons to keep going. And I mean, it is always a risk to tell the truth about something so serious. And
it's probably riskier not to, though.
Yeah, for sure. And I would really prompt anybody to think about, like, do you really want to die, or do you just want this pain to be over? And you don't know how. Because I don't think I really wanted to die. I think I just didn't know what else to do, and I didn't know how to move forward, and I really just needed help. And I was used to being so self-reliant, and when I didn't feel like I knew what the answer was, it's like, oh, well, nobody else does either. And I didn't really believe that.
Right.
It's like, well, you're not the smartest person in the world. There's a lot of people who know more than you about a lot of things. So maybe try asking them,
And also, if I loved how you, what you said about suicide, that is a reasonable reaction to an unreasonable situation, right? Or to an extreme situation. If what you really want is not to die, but just to not be in pain. And if it is a reasonable reaction to an extreme situation, then those two things can change.
Right.
Even if in the moment it doesn't feel like it. But if you're in an extreme situation and now you're an adult and you have the power to maybe change it, or at least a possibility or an option or a path maybe to change it. And also pain can go away. And I mean, this is a healing channel, so we've talked about it so many times, but I think that's such a good way of putting it, and way to bring awareness that at the end of the day, probably it's not that you want to die. If you would not be in pain, you most likely would want to be alive.
Yeah. If you could have what you wanted, what would that be? Do you actually believe that there's some way of getting it? Like, it's so funny that I spent so much of my life suicidal and feeling like that was a reasonable thing to be. It's like, yeah, well, my life sucks. Maybe I should die. But I in my 20s was working, I was actually working at a deli, and a coworker actually, he killed himself. And it turned out it was because of a disagreement he had with his girlfriend. And he felt like they were going to break up and not get back together. And even after my whole history, I was still judging, like, that's so ridiculous. Like, eventually you're going to get over it. Like, why would you think? But it's like, I was really lacking in compassion in that moment because I could have understood, like, there was some part of him that felt like, I will not be able to get over this pain. I do not understand how I don't believe I could live without my girlfriend. And that belief being so strong.
So this is a call also for a lot of compassion for anybody struggling with suicide, either for people to have compassion toward themselves, which I think is essential and key, but also if you are not struggling with suicide, but you know people who are, you might take a little bit of time to notice how judgmental or one can be, against those people, and how that most likely will only reinforce what already has happened to them to become suicidal. Like when people were saying, "Oh, she's just asking for attention" or stuff like that, and switching to a place of being more compassionate and be like, "Yeah, this is just a natural reaction." You said a reasonable reaction, which I agree. And I would add natural to a reasonable, natural reaction to something that has happened that, to me, only calls for a compassionate heart and to be like, I'm sorry that this happened to you.
I think we put like another layer of suffering onto our suffering because we feel like we shouldn't feel this. Like, I think it's, I didn't give myself the space ever to be like, it's okay to be sad. It totally makes sense that you're sad. It's like, I shouldn't feel this way. Yeah. I should be fine. So because I'm not, I shouldn't exist because you should only exist if you're feeling fine. Like, it just was so illogical. And I think it's important to make space for like what sadness or grief is trying to teach us. And I didn't give myself that space. And I can imagine that someone who feels suicidal, like what they're actually feeling is something else that they feel like it's not okay to feel. Yeah. Just a few weeks ago, I released a video called Spiritual and Emotional Bypassing, and how that is a much more serious problem in our society than what we give it credit for. So if you are interested in learning more about that and learning more about how, every emotion is okay and why it's important to learn that, then you can go and check it out. I'll link it in the description below. So, but I just released that. So you reminded me of, I think these conversations can be so important for people struggling like this. So, and if people think it's too scary to talk about and it's too taboo to talk about. I read this somewhere. I don't actually know if it's true, but I read that suicide per capita is higher in Hawaii. Like if you adjust for population, like proportionally, because more people there feel like, I shouldn't be depressed.
Right. I'm in this paradise, so I should be happy, right? Yeah. So it's the difference between what they believe they should be feeling and what they are feeling.
Yeah. So I think that I didn't trust that anyone was actually going to help me. I thought that telling the truth was just going to make things worse. And that was my experience growing up. It's like, it's bad enough that you're upset. If you tell an adult, they're going to make you feel worse.
Right.
So keep it to yourself.
All right. So moving forward, you purchased firearms. Tell me more.
Yeah. So I moved from New Jersey down to Virginia, mostly because New Jersey is really expensive. And there were just a lot of reasons why I didn't want to live there anymore. And it's really difficult to get a firearm in New Jersey. And one of the things I was excited about when I moved down south was I was like, I know it's going to be easier to get a gun. So it was pretty much being like, I'm done messing around with these overdoses. Like, if I'm going to do it, I really want to be done. Like, I don't want to just end up in the hospital. So I was in therapy and just kind of working a bunch of like underemployment type jobs. Like, I've sort of struggled to be able to have a meaningful job, I think, because I struggle with stress and mood disorders. And the first time I ever got a gun from the pawn shop,
From a pawn shop?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
With amazing, I'm not saying it in a good way.
Yep.
I'm from Argentina. This is the most unheard of thing like any of us could hear. I think people in Europe, same way. It's like getting a gun in a pawn shop, like it's a bicycle.
Yep. Yeah, or a new bracelet.
Okay.
And
Keep going.
and I didn't tell anybody about it for a long time. I just had it, and it was that safe feeling of like, okay, like I felt so much more comfortable having it. Of like, okay, no matter how bad things get, I have a way out. And there was a time when I actually wrote a suicide note and decided to share it instead of doing anything. I shared it with the person I was living with at the time and my therapist. And so they made me bring it back to the pawn shop. That was like part of the agreement of moving forward. And so I did. And I went back the next day and bought it back. So again, that like mix of hope and hopelessness. So another time, this was a couple years later, I did again. Actually, it was a couple days before my birthday. It felt like a birthday present to myself. Of like, okay, like we're really not. Nothing's gonna. If nothing else works out, we have this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was still trying find new ways to feel better. I had tried, like I said, like every kind of antidepressant you can imagine. I had tried taking magic mushrooms because I had heard that, especially at a microdose, could potentially help with mood disorders, and just had a couple of like really disastrous experiences with that. So I was like, okay, that doesn't work. And around that time that I got the gun, I was also researching ketamine as potential treatment for depression. I heard about it on a podcast. It's actually from Neil Brennan. Neil Brennan's the one who exposed me to TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation, which is another depression treatment that I tried. I tried everything. That worked for a little bit, but then didn't work after a while.
It's not really addressing the source of the depression. The source of the depression is your childhood and how you've been treated and the emotions that are stuck. So I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No,
it's important because people watching this might be like, well, maybe I'm also struggling with that. Like nothing is working, right? Because this, like you can try to magnetically change the stimulus of the brain. You can take these pills that change the serotonin levels of your brain. Like, as you were saying, you thought that it was just that you were born with a brain that was in a chemical imbalance. And it's not untrue that while you're going through depression, you are having lower levels of serotonin. So there is a chemical imbalance, but that is the consequence, not the cause. That is the manifestation, not the reason. So like you start being depressed because of all the things that happen to you. And so the brain responds as a simple consequence by reducing the level of serotonin. So you can try all of these like external things, but as long as you don't go straight to the source of the cause, then it's not going to fix it. So in a way, it's not that hard to address depression. Sorry, it's pretty simple. It's not that complex to address depression. At the end of the day, all you got to do is go to the source. Now, the tools to do that, the proper professionals, the proper facilitator, that's when maybe things become a little bit more sensitive. But when it comes to what's the reason for depression and anxiety and all these things, it's not chemical, and it's no external stimuli will really do the trick. It can help for a little bit, but as you were saying. So yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
I wanted to make sure that anybody listening to this knows that it's actually pretty simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was my core beliefs that, that wasn't changing. Like the core belief of you're not supposed to be here. Not only are you not supposed to be here, it's not a good thing that you're here. Like no amount of pills or, that was not a structural problem with my brain.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was a belief that I internalized from my childhood. So yeah, it was definitely trauma, and I wasn't doing anything to address trauma other than, talk therapy might have helped a tiny bit. I feel like it was chipping away at like a giant iceberg, like just maybe working on my shame a little bit. If you, share a story and the therapist says like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Like that shouldn't have happened to you. Like maybe that's like a tiny little drop in the bucket of
sympathy.
Yeah. Yeah. But like my core shame of like, I feel this way and there's no reason for me to feel this way. Like you're just a problem. So I didn't really think that it was ever going to go away. But I kept trying because at least I had enough logic to realize like, okay, well, suicide is the option that ends all other options. So I might as well try the other options and just keep the gun hidden in my closet, just in case. Like it's there, I know it's there, but I'll try these other things. And so
it's like plan Z, but it works. So if anything else fails, it's like a safety mat or something.
Yeah. So the glorious internet. So I went on the internet and found out about ketamine from Yale Brennan, and there were some clinics in Northern Virginia where you could go for IV therapy, and it would be really expensive. I would have to get a driver because you can't drive yourself home. I would have to get hotel rooms. It was going to be like crazy, crazy expensive. I was like, I don't think there's any way I can make that work. But I found that there is this other type of ketamine administration that was a nasal spray, and that could be given at a doctor's office. So I just needed to find a doctor that was going to provide that. So like on the website, they had a list of providers, and I found one that was in my hometown within walking distance from my apartment. So I was like, I'm in. Like all I wanted was like just to try a different drug that I hadn't tried before.
Yeah.
I had so much hope that like, okay, I've heard that this can really help with suicidal thoughts.
Just in anticipation for the audience, here's where the story gets pretty juicy.
Yeah, we're already talking guns, so it's already like high drama here. So I found this doctor, and he was in what's called a concierge medicine practice. I don't know if you're familiar with that means, but so in concierge medicine, you have to pay a pretty high fee just to be part of the practice. Like just to even see this person as a doctor, you have to pay all these extra fees. And basically it gets you some benefits like maybe faster appointment times or
it's like a club membership.
Exactly. It's totally like a club membership. So I had to, join this concierge practice, pay all this extra money. All I wanted was the ketamine. And I met with this doctor, and he was like, well, like, we need to do some genetic testing, and we need to do all these tests, and, let's like switch up your meds first. Like he didn't want to give me the ketamine right away. He was like, let's try other things. Like you have sleep apnea. Let's maybe work on that. Like he wanted to put me on blood pressure medicine.
What?
Yeah.
You came here because you're struggling with suicide. Some blood pressure medicine is going to help? Okay. Keep going.
Yeah, because he's like, well, maybe it's your sleep. Maybe you have ADHD. Like he was just like throwing out so many things. And I was like, okay. So I had to like kind of play along with his nonsense for a couple months before.
Couple months? Oh, I didn't know this part.
Yeah, he was trying to, he was actually doing due diligence of trying to like rule out everything else because it's kind of a pain to get the ketamine. Like I had to go back and forth with my insurance company. I had to send them like every document of every psychiatrist I'd ever been to. And like, these are all the drugs that have failed. Like, because you basically have to prove to get it covered by insurance that your depression is treatment resistant.
Right.
Enough. So you have to prove how much treatment you've received that didn't work. So I finally did all that. And I was so excited to finally be able to get this drug, even though I did not really like this doctor. I was like, I don't really like, he doesn't really listen to me. He like wants to put me on all these other drugs. And, but I was like, I pretty much like forced him to write me the prescription for it. And I had like pretty bad drugs.
Did you force him with a gun?
No, he didn't know I had the gun. So in part of my like depression screening test that I had to do with him, one of the questions he asked is, do you have a firearm? And I was like, nope. So it didn't even occur to me that I should tell the truth about that. I was like,
well, you don't trust him. So of course.
Right. Because he would have been like, well, you shouldn't have that. You need to get rid of it. And I didn't want to at that time.
Yeah.
So yeah. So ketamine was like going to be the thing. And I remember actually saying to my my therapist at the time, like, I know it's not really the right fit, but I'm just really hopeful that this drug is going to help me. Like I was like, doing it in a doctor's office, it's probably not the best environment. Like literally they didn't change anything about the doctor's office. Like there was no like soothing music or anything, like absolutely no preparation. Like I, through my own research, knew like, oh, well, I should probably bring an eye mask. Maybe I should bring some music. Like he didn't even turn the phone off in the office. So like it was just like ringing
throughout. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You didn't trust him, but you still want it. I think it's just the consequence of desperation, right? Like,
yeah, I was totally
you'll
desperate.
do whatever it takes to get this in your system.
Yeah, and I still kind of believed in like the Western medicine mindset of like, well, this drug helps, so I need to take this drug.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I did know that context was important, but I didn't care enough to not do it.
Yeah. Getting it was more important at that point.
Yeah.
Everybody at home, please don't do psychedelics with a facilitator or practitioner that you don't feel comfortable or trust. Please. It's key and essential.
Yeah. And if you have like a bad feeling, you should listen to that bad feeling. Like, I do understand. It's funny because I sort of knew something bad was going to happen, but I was just like, no, I've come this far. I'm doing it. Like, this is what I wanted. I really wanted to do this. So, also there's no, dosing, differences with the nasal spray. So with the IV, drug, the IV administration of ketamine, it's by body weight. They weigh you and they titrate the dose to body weight. This is just, it's the same 2 puffs, 1 puff in each nostril for everyone. And I remember thinking in the back of my head, I should ask him for a lower dose. I should ask him if he can give me a half dose. But I just didn't say anything. I was just like, oh, I'll just go with it.
I'll just trust the guy that I don't trust.
I'll just trust the guy that I don't trust. Yeah. So they give you, 1 puff, like just to make sure you're not going to have like an immediate, allergic reaction. Like you're not going to go into immediate cardiac arrest or something. And then if that doesn't happen, then they give you the 2nd puff. But I live in Charlottesville, Virginia, and right before they were going to give me the medicine, the nurse who was just like taking my vital signs, she's like literally just like taking my blood pressure. Is like, did you hear about that shooting last night? And I was just like, no, I didn't read the news. She was like, oh, like I would have thought that you would have seen like police checkpoints like on your way here. And I was like, no, I didn't. I walked here. So just like making conversation.
What kind of conversation right before into a psychedelic experience?
Yeah. And so that should have been like, I should have, I don't know what I like, there's no way I was going to stop. Like, even though in the back of my head, I was like, that's a really like weird thing to talk about right before this. Like I was just so focused on like full speed ahead. So that's the last thing that we were talking about right before I'm given this medicine. I don't know if anybody has, if you do any kind of healing ceremony, whether it involves substances or not, like usually like you set an intention and you're very like mindful about what you want to get out of it. And this was just like, nope, okay, we're gonna, you good? Like,
yeah. It's like they're giving you ibuprofen or something.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the last thing we talked about was the shooting. And then she gives me the doctor comes in, gives me the 1 puff, waits 5 minutes. I didn't go into anaphylaxis. So gives me the 2nd puff. And for a while, nothing happens. And then I start to feel like a little like floaty, kind of like pleasant body high type experience. And then all of a sudden it was just like, I don't know, something completely shifted and I just immediately felt super afraid. And I'm like laying there in the room by myself, like, they're like going to check on me every couple minutes. And I was just like, I said to the nurse, I was like, can you come in here? I'm scared. And she's just like, hurries in. And I just start like talking all kinds of like nonsense about miracles and God and how like I think I'm dying and like I'm pretty sure I'm dying. And like really, really felt like just so afraid and like something was about to happen where I was about to die. And so the nurse is like talking to me for a little bit. She's like, I'm going to get the doctor. So he comes in and talks to me for a little bit. And for some reason, I started to feel better when he was talking to me. I was like just saying all kinds of like spiritual things, like like asking him whether he had like accomplished everything he wanted in life. Like pretty much like I felt like whoever I was talking to, I was kind of like talking to God. So even though like I kind of knew who he was, I was also like, this is your chance to talk to God before you die, because that's what's happening right now. So like ask him the questions that you want to ask him. And I kind of like started to feel better at that point of like, okay, like if I ask the right questions, like I can make everything okay. And I don't really remember everything we talked about. I definitely asked him if he had accomplished everything he wanted in his life. And he was like, maybe not. Like he was kind of like jokingly entertaining the state of mind that I was in, but I don't think he was like taking it seriously that I was having like a really, really intense experience of like feeling like I was dying.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't really know what he thought was happening. Like she's saying weird things about like God now, and she wasn't 15 minutes ago, but yeah, I really don't understand. Like,
sometimes I'm even curious if they've even experienced that themselves, or if they have experienced it maybe once or twice, but they might not know exactly what it feels like to be in that situation. And me as a psychedelic facilitator, I am so grateful for all the times that I have gone through terrifying, soul-crushing experiences that are worse than death. Because obviously, in the moment, I wasn't grateful.
Yeah,
but I'm grateful today, because as I am holding space for people who are in that situation, I know exactly what they're going through. And if it's not the exact same experience, I know what that feels like. And I think just through empathy and compassion, and like your heart connects with them, and they can feel it, either because you're saying the right things or because there's an energy to you that makes them feel that they are not alone and makes them feel seen.
Yeah, there's no way he had experienced the ketamine. Absolutely not. Like I don't know that for like there's no way. He had no idea what it feels like to be on the medicine. And it's funny, like there's really no training that they have to go through to be able to become a licensed provider of this form of ketamine.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing you have to do as a doctor is provide an environment where you can monitor the patient for 2 hours afterwards. So there's no training about what they're experiencing.
Mm-hmm. Well, because whatever these laws are probably also made by people who haven't done it. So people who haven't done it are creating laws for other people who haven't done it to serve it. And so when you start talking about God and you're desperate that you're about to die, person must not you just can't relate. They're like, what do I do now? Like, okay, I guess it's just gonna pass, or maybe she's just going through something and it's gonna pass.
Yeah, he had no idea. So we kind of had like a semi-pleasant conversation where I remember also asking him something about like, I went to get up and there was a mirror in the room and I was like, oh, you're not supposed to look in a mirror. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you never heard that you're not supposed to look in a mirror when you're high? And he's like, no. And I was like, this guy doesn't know anything. He really doesn't know anything about drugs. Like, of course you're not supposed to look in a mirror when you're high. Like, even I know that. I don't know anything. These are just the thoughts I had. It's funny because like I remember a lot and then there's like gaps. And like I kind of felt like I could remember my regular self before I was in this like panic, I'm about to die feeling. But it also like felt so real. Like I really felt like, okay, I have to say the right thing, or I'm definitely like gonna go like to the afterlife in like a bad form or something. I'm gonna get like a bad reincarnation or something. So anyway, like in other times where I've had bad like drug experiences, whether it's on like cannabis or mushrooms, I usually feel like I need to like confess my sins to like whoever is around.
I don't remember you confessing your sins to me.
I don't think I had. I think because I had been telling you the truth the whole time.
Oh, great.
So I didn't really have any sins I confessed a couple sins to the person who was like sitting with me during like the peak of my experience. I pretty much, it was just telling her that I still had an eating disorder. I was like, I'm getting better, but I still have an eating disorder. And she's like,
That's okay.
yeah, that's okay. Like, thanks for telling me. But anyway, so I think I'd gotten up to go to the bathroom. I definitely was standing up when I told him, I was like, by the way, I know I told you I didn't have a gun, but I do. And like, that was like, in that moment, I felt like that's what the medicine was like calling me to confess to him. You know, whether it was because we had just talked about guns right before the meeting or not the meeting, where we had just talked about guns, like right before they gave me the medicine. But like, that's what came up, was like, you need to tell the doctor that you have a gun. And he immediately became like angry. And that like shifted me, like instantly. I was like, he's going to kill me.
Oh no, that kind of state of paranoia in the middle of a psychedelic experience. That's so terrifying.
Yeah. And it was like, it became like an absolute truth. And I was like, no. And I was like, just screaming no, and then like running. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Like, I like literally felt like, you know, if I was in like a active shooter situation now, where I'm like, I don't know why I thought that he might have a gun. Like, I had no reason to think that, but that was like in my high state, was that was what I thought was happening. So I went to try to get my phone to call 911, and he was literally like grabbing my hand away from the phone, like to not let me call 911. And like, he's literally grabbing my hand, and I'm trying to run away and just like screaming no. And this is like in a doctor's office. Like, there's like other people around. There's like
Wow. It's so comedic at the same time.
It like really is funny when you think about it, like, or when you like play it like a movie. And so the doctor's office is in the first floor of like a building that had other offices as well. And like a previous therapist that I had seen actually had the offices upstairs. So at one point I was like screaming for her, like screaming for someone to help me. But then I remembered that I had my phone. So I called 911. He's trying to like grab me. Like, he had no plan of like what he was going to do, like to stop this like screaming, hysterical, paranoid woman. And like, I didn't have my shoes on. I didn't have my coat on. And I eventually just like broke away and just like ran out the door. So just paranoid mental patient, just took off, no shoes, just like screaming, just took off down the street.
Amazing. Amazing also because you took ketamine, which like it's basically used as a pet anesthesia, and for humans is dissociative. So you basically disconnect from your body. And I've done ketamine, I think 3 times. And 3 times I did it, I could not move, even if my life depended on it. But I guess when your life depends on it, or you believe that, then like maybe you find a way.
I don't know. I didn't have a dissociative experience. I really felt in my body the whole time. I definitely felt like fear, like it was pretty much like being in like a nightmare you can't wake up from, or like just like a pure like panic attack type feeling. But I was like completely in my body. I was definitely like feeling like sluggish as I was running down the road. But yeah, no, like I didn't have like this sedative effect that it seems to have. I mean, maybe it was like the dosing. I'm not sure, like whatever the starting dose is.
I think it's important here to know before you continue, because the story keeps becoming more and more amazing. This just to get the point across about set and setting, that what triggered this wasn't the ketamine. It was the distrust of the facilitator. It was that you did something vulnerable, like confessing that you lied about a gun. I think in that moment, it's a big moment of vulnerability, which I'm not surprised that you have this need to confess your sins when you're on psychedelics, because a lot of times psychedelics make you feel that it's okay to be vulnerable. And so maybe that's the vulnerable thing to say, is like, I lied, because maybe it's weighing on you.
Yeah.
And so yeah, even until then, it was okay. You were even saying that you were starting to feel better. And it was when he got angry that this happened, because now you felt that he was going to kill you. So if the guy, instead of being angry, would have been like, thank you so much for telling me, that's so good that you are able to be vulnerable, maybe none of this would have happened, right? So
I feel confident that if he had handled it like compassionately, then like, oh, like let's talk about why you had it. Like, I think it could have honestly been like one of the most healing journeys of like me, being able to be honest about like how much I was struggling, being like, oh, like we'll be able to get you help for that. I would have been like, yes. But
yeah, it's just the importance of setting and having a facilitator that gets it.
Yeah.
So like a facilitator getting angry at their participant while they are going on a psychedelic experience is bad.
Yeah.
It's just bad.
And he had no plan. Like I remember asking so in preparation to do this, for what minimal preparation there was, I did like ask a lot of the right questions, and I never really got good answers from him. Like one of the things I asked is like, I've had kind of bad trips on like pretty small amounts of marijuana or like microdoses of mushrooms. Like, what do you do when somebody is like having a really bad experience? And he was just like, it happens sometimes, but it doesn't happen much.
Thanks for nothing.
Yeah, like he did not give me a good answer to that question at all. Like I pretty much asked exactly like, if this happens, like, do you have a plan? And pretty much it was like, no, it's like probably not going to happen. So he had no plan for like how to calm me down or like other than literally like grabbing my arm to try to keep me from running away. So anyway, I took off down the street running. I did have my phone. I think I did call 911, but they also probably called 911. And I just went to the first business that I encountered. But actually, I remember, so while I was running, I remember like, I don't know if this is going to make sense, but in times when I've had like drug experiences, I'll have this like feeling that the world is not real, that it's all just like a simulation, that it's all just like a video game. And I'm like, oh God, I found like a glitch in the system. Like the system's glitching. Like Matrix, like, blue pill, like that whole thing. And as I was running, I remember like literally out loud screaming at the sky, this one's too scary. Like this simulation's too scary. Like, I don't like this one. Like put it back. Like put it back to normal. So like I yeah.
Tweak a few knobs, put it back into the right setting.
Please put it back. So I ended up at a bakery that I had worked at that was like a couple doors down, and was saying like, this person's chasing me, they're trying to kill me. And meanwhile, the shooter from the shooting that the nurse mentioned the night before, he was actually still at large. So the town really was like on the lookout for like an active shooter.
And then you come in yelling, this guy's gonna kill me.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So they actually like believed me and like, let me in and locked the door, and I'm like hiding and scared. And I guess like the doctor eventually caught up and like kind of explained the situation. But like once he caught up, I was like, oh no. And so then I had to like run out again. So like I only was in the bakery for a little bit, and then I ran to a grocery store that I also had used to work at because I've had like a million jobs, and said the same thing, like, this guy's trying to kill me. And the manager like saw me and like locked the door behind me. And like at first they were going to like keep me safe, but then I guess like the doctor caught up. Like he was just kind of like walking casually after me, like while this was happening. Like he didn't seem like in any particular like hurry to like catch up with me. And so once I was at the grocery store, the police came and they were talking to me, and I don't remember a ton of like what I said while I was like super, super under the influence at this point. Meanwhile, ketamine, like this type of administration, it's only supposed to last like 20 to 30 minutes, like the height of your experience. So like, I don't really know exactly how long I was in like the most intense part of the experience, but it seems like it was like quite a bit longer than that.
It could be that at that point it wasn't the ketamine anymore. It just went through like a panic attack and a paranoid break, and it could just, people go through those things even without ketamine. So
right.
The ketamine might have made you more open, and then with the improper setting, that got triggered, and off you go.
Like a panic attack. But I was talking to the manager as if he were God, and I was like, you have to ask your questions to him. Like now he's like, it's like whoever I'm talking to becomes God, and I have to like ask my questions to them. And I asked if we were dating, This I only know because of like I talked to him after the fact, and he was like, "Yeah, you were asking me all kinds of questions, and like I was just really feeling like I was bargaining for my life, like that my life was about to end, and I needed to like make a case for myself of like whether I'd been good enough to like be worth like not ending up in hell, basically." So eventually, after talking to the people at the store, eventually the cops did show up, and they were talking to me, and they're like, "So what's this about like a gun that we heard?" I guess the doctor had told the police like what I was saying in my paranoid state, and I was like, I promise I wasn't going to use it on anybody else, like just myself. Like I was pretty much like pleading with them like not to arrest me. And I was also looking at the cop's gun and being like, I wonder if he's going to kill me. Like maybe that's how I'm going to die. Like I was just feeling like really, really like my brain would just attach to like any random fear from like anything in the environment. Like there was like a helicopter noise, and I was like, maybe the helicopter's going to shoot me. Like, I don't know. It was like a very intense state of just feeling like whatever I see, it's something it's like a threat.
It's so amazing, the juxtaposition between suicidality and really running for your life. It's very interesting, like how I think it just shows how we are split in different parts. And there's a part of us that wants to die. There's another part that wants to live.
It makes sense that this type of experience was what kept happening to me when I would try drugs, because I was chronically suicidal, but the medicine was trying to teach me like, you don't actually want to die. I'll show you what it feels like. If you really think you're about to die, you're going to realize that you're scared and you don't want that to happen.
Wow.
So like, that's what I think like the medicine was doing, was like, okay, you want to die? Like, let's make you feel like that's what's happening. And like, I like ran and fought and screamed and was like scared. So anyway, we're talking about the gun, and, I'm like, I promise, like I wasn't going to hurt anybody. And I don't really remember what I was talking about. Like maybe I was confessing other sins, like, like I've stolen things before. Like, I don't know what I said, but the next thing I know, I'm getting handcuffed behind my back and my head's getting pressed onto the conveyor belt, like the grocery store, like where the groceries go down. Head being pressed onto the conveyor belt and getting handcuffed behind my back and brought out to the police car.
Wow. What a less than ideal psychedelic experience.
Yeah, I just don't understand why they felt like they needed to handcuff me. Like I was like quite eager to go to the hospital because I just wanted to be safe from the doctor, who I still thought was trying to kill me. Like I was not like resisting arrest at all. Like, so I don't know why they felt like they needed to handcuff me. But it's really funny. As soon as I was handcuffed in the back of the police car, I started to feel better. Because at least I was like safe now.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, they're going to take me to the hospital.
Did they take you to a police station or to a hospital?
Just to the hospital. And actually the cop that handcuffed me, like he was pretty scary. Like I really was like worried about like whether he was going to kill me, but the other cop was like a lot nicer. I think he maybe had some like de-escalation training, because nowadays there's some movement towards police officers being trained how to handle like acute mental health crisis, of like how to like calm a person down. And so the cop in the car seemed to have like much more of that training. He was like, so where do you work? And like, so where do you live? And like the fact that he was just asking me questions like normal, like I started to be able to like feel like, okay.
Maybe he was tweaking the knobs of the simulation back to normal.
Yeah, maybe. So he brought me to the hospital, and like as he was taking me out of the car, he took off the handcuffs, and he like said to himself, he's like, unnecessary. So he thought that was unnecessary. So it was kind of nice. Like he didn't say it very loud to me, but I could definitely hear him say that. And so I'm waiting at the hospital, and basically just like starting to feel normal, even though I was still really scared. So I guess like the peak of the experience probably was only about like 30 to 40 minutes at the most. Maybe even less than that. Because it really was more like a panic attack at the end, to where as soon as you are in a safe place, you start to feel better.
Yeah.
Like from my experiences of panic attacks. And so I'm just waiting at the hospital, and eventually a doctor comes in to ask me questions and be like, are you a danger to yourself or others? And I'm like, no, like I'm literally here because like I was scared to die. Like, so I'm not a danger to myself anymore. It's just like funny how fast that like change happened of like, okay, like I know I said it again, but like I really, really don't want to die. Like I was really just scared. So it became like, well, we can't let you go home until we do something about like the gun that's at your house. Like, we're not going to let you leave. And so I was like, ugh, like, can't the cops just go? And they were like, no, like, we're not going to like have the cops go. So I ended up having to like call my ex.
It's not a booty call. It's a slightly different situation.
Yeah, it's like, so funny story. Need you to come to the hospital. Need you to get my key. Need you to go to my apartment. There's a gun hidden underneath my sweaters in the closet. You need to, like, literally, this is what had to happen. And they had to call my therapist and tell him what was happening and be like, she has to come for an appointment the next day. And literally, I was waiting at the hospital for hours. And like the cop who drove me there, like he was just sitting with me. Like he was really nice. He would like chat with me if I wanted to chat, or he would just kind of like look at his phone. Like, but he like stayed with me the whole time. I guess they like weren't, I don't know if they weren't allowed to leave me alone, or if he just did that out of kindness. But it was like a few hours later before the doctor, the ketamine doctor, showed up. And I think the only reason he came was because I had left my purse and my shoes and my coat there. So he needed to like bring those to me. And he was just not reassuring at all. Like he pretty much just seemed kind of annoyed and like he didn't want to be there.
How dare you have a terrifying psychedelic experience?
Pretty much he was still kind of mad at me. Yeah. Honestly, was the vibe that I got. And he was just
this
like,
person should not be administering psychedelics.
Like, yeah, like it's like getting mad at a kid for having a tantrum, which sadly a lot of people do.
Yes.
It's like it's someone who's like in a vulnerable state. So yeah, he gave me back my coat and purse and shoes, and we like didn't exchange much at all. Like he didn't say, I'm so sorry that happened. He didn't say, I'm glad you're okay. He didn't say, like, I'm glad you're feeling better. He was just kind of like, just a couple of like polite words and then left. Like, I really don't think he would have come to check on me if I hadn't left those things there. He was like, yeah, like make an appointment, like a follow-up appointment with our office.
So cold.
Yeah, it was really, and I was like totally traumatized. And I was like, I never want to go back there. Like, he wants me to make a follow-up appointment. Like, I really don't ever want to go back there. So once my ex finally, got the gun, and I had to talk to another social worker basically to make sure I was safe, and they let me go home. And it's funny though, because in everything that happened, I like had run out of the office with my cell phone, and I guess I had lost it somewhere. And it turns out I had left it at the grocery store. And so the manager of the grocery store called the hospital being like, we have her phone. So the cop dropped me off back at the store so I could get my phone. And when I went back there, he was like, here. And he like stood up and was like, is it okay if I give you a hug? The manager of the grocery store was like so much more genuine and compassionate than my own doctor. Like, he was the one who was like, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Like, I'm really glad you're okay. Like, is it okay if I give you a hug? Like,
so sweet.
Yeah. Like, he was a genuinely nice person. And so I was walking home because I lived really close, because, you can't drive yourself with ketamine. So I had to like walk to the office. And as I'm walking home, I was like texting with my therapist, and he was checking to see if I was okay. And I remember feeling like I was mostly just feeling embarrassed, and like I felt like I needed to put like pressure on myself to like make a joke about it or be like, oh, like it's actually fine. And like I felt like really like I did something wrong, even though part of me knew like you didn't do anything wrong. Like, I mean, obviously like lying about the gun, but like I was trying to like fix that. So anyway, I kind of just like avoided the doctor for a few days after that, like, cause like their office kept calling me to try to like make a follow-up appointment. And I just like didn't want to go back there. I honestly was like, I think that was like a re-traumatizing experience.
For sure.
See, I still like, even today, like I have trouble like saying that. It's like, there's still part of me like in the back of my mind that's like, it was no big deal. Like, whatever. Okay. So you were handcuffed and brought to the hospital in the police car. Like, no big deal. Like, you're fine now.
Yeah. That's called bypassing. That's what I was talking about 30 minutes ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
We do that a lot to make ourselves feel better and to soothe ourselves.
Yeah. I was like disappointed. Like, okay, I guess I can't do that anymore. But the weird thing is that like in the weeks that followed, I realized that like the ketamine experience actually did what I set out for it to do, which was to heal my suicidal thoughts. Because like that experience was so scary of like really, really feeling like I was about to die. I was being chased by someone who was going to kill me. I think I realized that like, oh, I don't actually want to die. Like I was really just in a lot of pain. And it wasn't until I really felt like that was what was going to happen. I feel like the medicine kind of leads you to whatever it is that you're supposed to be led to.
Including the setting. So this is a little bit more of a mystic or cosmic thing, but the fact that you had the wrong facilitator was maybe the right facilitator.
Right. Yeah. Like I, in some cosmic way, like I chose that experience to like, there was nothing else that was going to heal my suicidal thoughts. Was like, I had to experience that I don't want to die. And how was I going to experience that unless like I had a reason to feel like I was fighting for my life?
Yeah. This is still not an excuse to go with the wrong facilitator. Don't choose it on purpose. But if life chooses it for you, maybe this
it's like
things like this.
I can go through this and tell my story, so you don't have to.
Correct. Yeah. So do you think that was that was it? That was what healed your suicidal thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some science to like what ketamine does to the brain. Like there is a reason that it's given to people who are acutely suicidal. I can't speak to anybody else's experience of what it feels like to take it for that purpose. But some people have much more mild experiences than me, but maybe they, you're supposed to be taking it a couple times a week, like for weeks. And that's like the full course of treatment for this nasal spray version.
I know a lot of people that have had great experiences and has been very healing for them. And then maybe didn't do the complete thing, and then they moved into a different thing. But for the majority of the reports I hear, they are not this scary.
I was a special case.
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, it says like in like the potential side effects, like may cause like dissociation, or like, I think I had like the most extreme version of that, where it's like reality becomes not real anymore. And everything is just a manifestation of your fears. And yeah.
You kept looking. Because obviously at some point you called me and you said, I want a ceremony. What kept you looking first? And second, why did you trust another facilitator to do this? With this new thing, now it's not even a thing that you know.
Yeah, even scarier and even riskier in some ways. I think like I really have always had this sense, or I shouldn't say always, for a long time I had this sense that I was just like surviving life, but I wasn't thriving. So like, getting rid of suicidal thoughts is like step one. It's like you have to live your life. You have to want to be here. And that like wasn't enough. Like I still was like, well, I still don't know what to do with my life. I still don't have, much self-worth. And I like, it wasn't done. Like that was just like the beginning, was being like, okay, I guess I'm here. I guess I'm supposed to live. So now what? So it didn't fix anything. I did, not that long after the ketamine experience, I did quit drinking alcohol, and I joined a 12-step program for that. And that was really helpful. but it just like still wasn't enough. I felt like I needed deeper healing. That was like providing me with some sense of community, which was really helpful, but it wasn't enough. And I was still, in many ways, like not doing well, like still depressed and still taking antidepressants. Like I just never went off of any of my medicine to do the ketamine. So I was talking to a friend, and her husband was like, "Oh, I've done ayahuasca, and I had this great experience with this person. Like, I'll give you his contact info if you want." And I don't know, like, I can't say like in that moment I knew, but sometimes these like steps on our healing journeys, like it just feels like a door opening a little bit. Like that's all it felt like. It was like, okay, so like I had your contact info for a couple months and didn't even reach out. And then when I did reach out to get on the email list, like at first, the first email, I was like, I don't think I'm ready. Like, I don't think I can come to ceremony. And then our ceremony was in July, and it wasn't until May, I think, that you sent an email again of like, hey, there's still a couple spots left. And I don't know, like it was just a feeling that it was the right thing to do. Like I never really had like faith in the universe, or like I didn't grow up like spiritual. I mean, I grew up like really, really atheist actually, and very cynical. But like I think with some of these experiences, I was starting to get a sense of like, it's okay to trust the universe a little bit. Like it might actually have your back. Like maybe this tiny glimmer of hope of like, maybe it actually could be okay. Like it's scary, it's risky, it's unknown, but I don't know. I felt like it was going to be the right thing. And maybe it was because you were actually recommended to me by somebody that I love and trust.
Yeah.
So that's like a good first step. But I just didn't know. I felt like I didn't really have a choice. It's like continuing to stay the same. Like there's this saying about addiction, like, and healing of like, you're not ready to change until the pain of staying the same seems worse than the pain of trying something new.
Yeah. Yeah. I always talk about that too in the channel. Like the main thing that creates change is when the discomfort of whatever it is to change is smaller than the discomfort of where you're at in this moment.
Yeah.
Discomfort plays a big role in what I would call readiness.
Yeah. So I wasn't acutely suicidal anymore. I didn't have a gun. I also got rid of, I still had some medications stockpiled for potential overdoses, and I got rid of all of those. So I was like, okay, I'm here, but that didn't necessarily fix all my problems. I still had a lot of trauma to heal. So I felt like coming to ceremony, coming to try something else, like some part of me was like, this is crazy. And another part of me is like, no, it's not. It makes total sense. Makes total sense why you would do this again. And it just like everything about it was so different. Like, even with you were more like responsive and empathetic, and you like listened so much better than this doctor that like was a 15-minute walk from my house, who I saw like and talked to in person. Like you still were so much more like receptive, and you like asked the right questions, and you had like good answers to my questions, and like everything about it, we just felt like a much more, I just felt much more taken care of, like from the beginning. And it was scary because I had to trust you with going off antidepressants, which I had been on for like, 15 years. They didn't work, but I was still clinging to them.
Yeah. I see that a lot.
It's like a raft that's sinking, but you're still like, no, but it's all I got.
Right. What a good analogy.
It's not really keeping you afloat, but it's the only thing you have. So yeah, I trusted you to go off my medicine, and it came out, and I had a very, very intense experience, but it was nowhere near as scary as what happened on ketamine, because you actually provide a safe environment here. It's like, first of all, taking phones.
Yes, important.
Because on all my bad trips, I always call 911. Like, because I always feel like, okay, like I need, like I'm dying, like I need someone here. So I probably would have done that, honestly, if you hadn't taking phones, taking car keys. It's like everything you do for providing the environment for ceremony, it's like the complete and total opposite of what my experience was, where it's like the environment is taken into consideration. Like the other people, like everybody's there for the same purpose. Like I don't even think the doctor like really put two and two together of like, she's taking this because she wants to die and she thinks this is going to help her not want to die anymore. Like to him, it's just like, this is just one of the drugs that I'm
Yeah.
Like I don't think those connections were there.
That's why it's important for the facilitator or doctor, whoever's administering, to have done it and know what it feels like and be empathetic. Have a heart that's open and connects with the participant. All of those things are essential.
Yeah, I can't actually understand why he wanted to be a provider of this medicine other than money.
Money. I mean, I can't imagine any other reason, honestly.
Yeah, because it wasn't aligned with his worldview at all. Just like, these medicines can be really expensive. And I think the treatment, like without insurance, it was like $1,500 a treatment. And you're supposed to take it a couple times a week for like 6 weeks. So that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So it is sad that is unfortunately what motivates some people.
I know your experience wasn't as scary, but you did have a few moments where it could have gone there, I would say. And the main difference that I see is that we just held you. We just held you and reassured you. I'm not going to say here the details of the things that you are saying, but you are saying things that if the answers wouldn't have been the right ones, it could have scared you again, or it could have made you want to run, or who knows, right? So that's where doing psychedelics, that can be so healing. That's the moment where you are in a vulnerable state, that can be extremely re-traumatizing or extremely healing, depending on how well you're held.
Yeah, it's like it's high risk, high reward. It's like to do the real healing, you have to go to the worst place, and you have to be like, you having done this so many times, it's like, the kinds of places that people go. Like, I'm not the first person to come to you with like childhood sexual trauma. Like,
no.
Like, unfortunately, I probably won't be the last either.
Unfortunately not. I always say that I wish I wouldn't have a job, because that would mean that people are doing much better. The fact that I fill up every ceremony is that there's a lot of healing to do.
There's so much unhealed trauma. And then also, I think this was in community. I was completely alone in my experience with the ketamine. And this is like, it's like a tribe really of people who are all here. And like, even if you or, Ash hadn't sat with me, somebody else would have sat with me.
Yes.
Like these medicines do come from like an ancient tradition where there were ceremony attached to it. And there was like, it was when we lived in a more communal style of existence.
And everybody there knew exactly what you were doing, what you were going through afterwards. You didn't even have to, like, here we talk a lot about integration as well. And we give tools and all of that. And I'm sure that wasn't like that before, because you didn't fly back home where no one can relate. Even your friends, your family might be against it. Your friends might be like, cool, but I don't know exactly how to, like, you go back to an old life, basically. You can do a lot of healing and you're ready for a new life. And then you go back to the one that you've been creating for the past 20 years. And no one is there to really support you. And I don't think that has happened when it was traditionally served in community, right? Because everyone there, you don't even have to fly back home. You don't even need to go anywhere. You're already there.
Yeah.
So if you're struggling with anything, you're already supported by the community, the same community that has provided that experience.
Yeah. And like, as bad as the ketamine experience was, like, I did still have like people I could process with, and I did a lot of journaling about it. And, as soon as I went back to my therapist, he was like, I wish I could have protected you. I wish I would have been there. Like, so I definitely felt cared for in other ways, like not by the doctor who gave it to me, but, felt cared for by other people. And I think that part of the integrating experience of like just someone holding space and being like, it's okay. Like, that's all I would have needed him to do.
Yeah. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you today after all of your experiences with all of these medicines?
It's interesting because I feel like, and we talk about this in 12-step a lot, like I feel like life doesn't actually get any easier I just get stronger. Like I feel like I have a bigger capacity to deal with things like difficulties that happen where I used to, I feel like I would have ended up inpatient. Now it's like I can just like journal about it and call a friend and go for a walk. And the same thing doesn't, like I don't have suicidal thoughts anymore. Like it really doesn't feel like an option anymore.
Yeah. That's amazing. Which
is crazy because I'd had that my whole life where it's like, yeah, you might still get sad sometimes. You might still experience grief sometimes. But like, I feel like I've literally grown in my capacity to contain more feelings. Like, I feel like I'm literally like a bigger container, like, or a more flexible container or something. Like there's a sense of like a physical sense of like spaciousness of, like if I think of like, I'm really good at coming up with like worst case scenarios. I'm really good at catastrophizing and my brain still does that, but I could be like, yeah, that could happen. And like, you'll probably figure it out and probably be okay. Like I started a job that was like really stressful. And, at the moment of like, what if I can't do this? What if I'm actually not good enough? Like there's another voice that's like, yeah, like maybe you'll quit. Maybe you'll get fired. Like you'll do something else. Like, and I feel like if somebody else was saying that to me, it would be like, that's so dismissive. Like, you don't understand. But like, because it's genuinely coming from inside, like that's my genuine experience now is that I do kind of have faith that things are going to work out and be okay.
Oh, you overcame suicidality that has followed you for decades. So I really think that if you could overcome that, then that proves that, yes, things can get better.
Yeah. And I think I wasn't appreciative enough of the people who did help me. I think I really went through life with such a strong victim mentality of like, I didn't get this from my parents and I didn't get this from the world. But like, you only really need one really amazing person that could completely send you in a different direction. So it's like, okay, you like, maybe you weren't able to tell your therapist everything, but like that one therapist did help. And just meeting one person, having one conversation could like spark an idea. So I think I have much more trust honestly, in like other human beings of like, yeah, a lot of them suck. A lot of them suck. A lot of them, are going to say the wrong thing, but it only takes one person to say the right thing. And I think like when we hear the truth, we connect with it. So it's like one person being like, no, I think you're really good at that. Like they're not some authority, but you feel the truth and you're like, okay, I believe you this time.
Lindsay, before we close, I'd like to ask you two questions. One is there anything else in you that's alive that you would like the audience to be left with?
There was part of me that was able to laugh about what happened like pretty quickly, even though it was so traumatic. And I do think like learning to take myself less seriously has been really helpful. And it's like holding space for some humor to come in. Like, I wrote about this experience and I like really made fun of myself. And I think that was part of my healing. And you have to do that when you're ready. Nobody can force you to feel okay about something that you don't feel okay about.
Including yourself.
Yeah.
You cannot force yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. But it came from a genuine place of like, it's actually pretty funny. Like when you really think about it. So yeah, I think like when you start to be able to laugh about the most difficult things, I think that's where healing is taking place. Yeah. So that's what I would say.
Beautiful. And the last question is, would you like to be found? And if so, where can people find you?
So I do have a Substack that I only have one posting on, but if people encourage me, maybe I'll be able to post more. So it's called Trauma's Always Trendy.
A good name.
Yeah, I came up with that on a walk with a friend. I was talking about the types of things that I like to write about. And I was like, trauma's always trendy. And I was like, oh, that would actually be a really good name for like a Substack. So if people comment, maybe I'll be able to get up the courage to post some more.
Website, Instagram?
I don't really do social media.
Right.
No. Yeah.
Congrats. I used to not do it until I started doing this. I was like, now I have to.
Maybe someday I'll go back on social media. If I want to do more with my writing, I'll probably have to get more savvy with social media. But
all right, I will link that in the description below so people can find you. And I want to say first, congrats on overcoming such intense suicidality that lasted for decades. Congrats on expanding your capacity to deal with the hardships of life. And last, I want to say thank you for everything that has happened to you that allowed for this to be shared so that anyone walking a very similar path, which I know there's millions of people, can know that there is hope, that the hope is based on reality, that suicidality and other forms of intense struggle can actually heal. We talked today about how we can make that happen and what are the basis for that and how to start a healing journey. So hopefully this will give people a lot more tools to deal with it. And partially it will be thanks to the fact that you walked that path first and you are here today sharing it. So thank you also for gathering the courage and the vulnerability to share your story and for flying in just to do that.
yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. I think I would also add that like healing is not going to be like easy or comfortable. Like it's going to lead you to some rough places. And, you know, after everything that happened, like with the right facilitator, I would do ketamine again. Like I really would. Like I think it ultimately, as difficult and terrible as it was the right thing. It was what was supposed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That if you're afraid of going through difficult, challenging things, it's going to be really hard to heal.
Yeah. I always say that healing work is hard to do, but not doing it is way
It's harder. Exactly. There was a saying, I think it was Joseph Conrad said, because he likes talking about dragons and hero stories, the greatest treasure will be found where you least want to look.
Well, I think that's a perfect wrap.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you once again. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for making it all the way here if you did. I hope that this was inspiring, enlightening, eye-opening, and I'll see you next week for whatever video I'll put out. Share this with whoever you think fit. If anybody's specifically struggling with depression or suicidality, this might give them a little bit of a lifeline and hope. So consider sharing that, and I'll see you all next week.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Bye. Did you know you could be part of this podcast? If you would like to be my guest, submit your unique medicine or healing story to hello@ivanchokran.com.